This is my audience. And here is my cameraman. Son of a gun. Have you ever thought of the old sayings that you say and you don't know what they mean? Well, this interested me, so I decided to research this and inform you about their originations and the events that happened to make them the way they are, and their present events, or their present meanings today. Son of a gun was just my favorite because I've heard all of my great-grandma, my grandma, my mom, my generation, everybody says it. They all know what it means in our present day, but they probably don't know what it means in his original form. So I just thought it was funny that once I learned what these mean, they don't mean anything what they were supposed to mean originally. When I researched son of a gun, after I researched this, I read a story about Navy British soldiers who were sailing across the Atlantic to the West Indies. They had been at sea a long time, and they weren't supposed to have women on their ships, but the captain of the ship just kind of turned a blind eye when they snuck prostitutes or extra random women on board. And the ships were pretty cramped, full of cannons and other equipment and people, and it was tiny ships. So they would have intercourse in between the cannons. And since there were so many random people or random women on the ship, along with random men, they would get pregnant, and then they would give birth in between the cannons as well. And so when they gave birth to sons, they didn't know who the dad was, so they were just called son of a gun, or son between the guns. And back then, if you were called a son of a gun, it was kind of a derogatory term, like the present-day bastard, or something not very nice to say. But today's terms, it's used as an exclamation of disbelief, like when something just wrong happens to you, you go, son of a gun. And so that's where that came about. As I researched more, I found out that this wasn't the case for all pregnancies on the ships, because some sailors were allowed to bring their wives aboard, so they wouldn't have to desert ships had there be an emergency back on the land. So, besides that, most of the babies consumed on board that were boys were called son of a gun. After I researched this, I really got interested and started browsing around at new things that I had known about. And my second one that I had researched was beat around the bush, which is actually the same kind of son of a gun. Like it makes no sense the way it was pretty used literally back when it originated, but now it means nothing that it used to. The original meaning was to physically hit a bush, because people would have to hunt for their food, and so critters would hide in bushes. And so people would beat the bush and make the critters run out or fly out, and then they would hunt them. So this dates back to the early 1400s because it was first published in a book called Jenardese. It was a romance book, and it dated back to 1440. Today it means to avoid or delay something, and I have this visual aid to help me out. They're comics that are quite literal. The beat around the bush is he's really beating the bush to get the wolf out so he can shoot it. But this lady is saying unscrambled sentence, and it says fired your. And she says, I'm not good at confrontation, so unscramble this phrase quickly to yourself and for a surprise message. Well, the guy's fired. So I'll pass that around. And on to my next thing. It was Saved by the Bell, which most people my age think of the TV show with Screech and Kelly and Zach, but it has nothing to do with that. The original meaning was to save people from being buried alive. Back in the 17th century, it was a real scare to be buried alive because they weren't medically advanced. So sometimes they would wrongly pronounce somebody dead, and they would bury them, and they would find scratch marks in the coffins later if they had to dig it up or something. So they tied a bell to the top, and then a pole goes down, and they would tie a string to the finger, so if somebody was buried alive, they would ring the bell, and so they were saved by the bell from being buried alive. These dated back to 300 years ago, and were made up to as late as 1955. There would be night watchmen at the graveyards making sure that if a bell rang, he could save them, and this is where the term graveyard shift came from. Presently, the saying means to be rescued just in time, kind of like a boxing match. The fear of getting buried alive was real. It was easy to be understood. It's easier to understand how this could easily happen as I inform you about my next saying. My next saying is called getting tanked. Originally, it was a description of somebody who was extremely drunk, which is now the same thing, but it was a little bit more intense back then. Getting tanked meant that local taverns called tankards, because they served ale out of a mug that was a tank, it was called a tankard, and they would drink so much that they would pass out. Well, people would wrongly think they were dead, so they would bury them, and they were really just passed out drunk. So they got buried alive. And so now the saying just means you're really, really drunk. And I have two more visual aids. I have the getting tanked one. This is a tankard, and getting tanked meant you were going to be buried alive. And the present day means a little bit less intense. It just means you're really, really drunk. So I'll pass that around. And back to my Saved by the Bell visual aid. This is what the coffins looked like with the bell at the top, where the finger was tied to the bell. And the present day meaning means, like this guy is going to go in, just got done with a round, and he's okay now, but he's about to go into another round. So the rest says, and in this corner, for the time being, ... because the bell saved him for now. And with these sayings, I just want to say I had a really fun time researching the history behind the sayings that I've shared with you today. I know all of you have heard them at one point in time, so I